9 May 1941, 11:17 hours, North Atlantic, 300 miles south of Iceland. Sub-Lieutenant David Balme, 20 years old, Royal Navy, stood in a pitching whaler alongside a flooding German U-boat that by all logic should have already sunk. Spray hit his face, the sea was running high, the submarine's stern dipped lower with each swell, water sloshing over the after casing. 8 men pulled oars beside him. They had 10 minutes, perhaps 15 if fortune smiled, to board an enemy vessel that might explode, dive, or capsize at any moment. This was the day the British discovered that German overconfidence could be turned into Britain's most valuable weapon. The question driving every second that followed was this: could a boarding party with zero intelligence training extract secrets from a dying submarine before the Atlantic swallowed everything whole? Subscribe to this channel if you believe it is our duty to preserve the stories of ordinary men who changed the course of wars they barely understood. Balme carried a Webley revolver. He had never boarded an enemy vessel. None of them had. Around them, German sailors thrashed in the water, some screaming, others silent and still. The U-boat's conning tower stood black against grey sky. Bullet holes stitched the pressure hull. The list to port was increasing. Standard Admiralty doctrine was clear: sink enemy submarines immediately, deny salvage, prevent intelligence capture by the enemy. But HMS Bulldog's commander, Captain Joe Baker Creswell, had made a different calculation. He had watched this U-boat surface stern first under direct fire, watched the crew abandon ship in chaotic haste, and watched the boat refuse to sink. Something was wrong with German procedure. That wrongness might be exploited. Baker Creswell's order was brief: board her, take everything not bolted down. If she starts to go, get off. The whaler bumped against U-110's starboard side at 11:19. Balme grabbed a stanchion and pulled himself up onto the wet casing. The submarine rolled 20 degrees beneath him. His boots slipped. Salt water filled them instantly. He smelled cordite, diesel oil, and something sharper, chlorine perhaps, or battery acid. Behind him, able seaman Wileman followed, then telegraphist Wild, then the others, leading seaman Berridge, stoker first-class Tilburn, men whose average age was 22 and whose combined intelligence experience totaled 0 minutes. The conning tower hatch stood open. No one had closed it. Balme drew his revolver and approached. The submarine groaned beneath him, metal protesting. He leaned over the hatch and shouted down into darkness. No reply. He swung onto the ladder and descended. Below, emergency lighting flickered. The control room was intact. Valves hung open. Instruments glowed. The deck sloped aft. Water sloshed around cable runs, but the compartment was not flooding yet. Balme stood alone in the belly of an enemy warship and realized with cold clarity that the Germans had abandoned everything. 20 minutes earlier, U-110 had been hunting convoy OB-318 outbound from Liverpool, 38 merchant vessels in loose formation, escorted by 3 corvettes and 2 destroyers. At 10:28 hours, Kapitänleutnant Fritz Julius Lemp, commanding officer of U-110, had fired a spread of torpedoes. The SS Esmond and SS Bangor Head took hits. Lemp had done this before. He was the man who sank the liner Athenia on the war's first day, killing 117 civilians, an act that turned neutral opinion against Germany. He was experienced, careful, and now he was overconfident. HMS Obritia, a Flower-class corvette, gained ASTIC contact at 10:52. Type 123A set, reliable to within 500 yards in good conditions. The contact was sharp, metallic, moving. Obritia's captain ordered depth charge patterns, Mark 7 charges, 290 pounds of amatol each, set for 100, 150, and 250 feet. The first pattern detonated at 10:54. U-110 took damage, electrical systems shorted, lights failed, depth gauge cracked. Lemp ordered emergency blow, compressed air screamed into ballast tanks. The U-boat shot upward stern first, breaking surface at a steep angle directly in front of HMS Bulldog at 10:57. Bulldog opened fire immediately, 4-inch main armament, point-blank range. Shells punched through the conning tower and pressure hull. The submarine's 88-meter deck gun never fired. Lemp screamed orders. Crew scrambled through hatches. Men fell into the sea. Others jumped. The boat wallowed, rocking, listing, but it floated. Lemp expected it to sink within minutes. German standing orders were explicit. Destroy all secret materials. Smash encryption equipment, open seacocks, flood the boat. But the depth charges had done more than mechanical damage. They had shattered procedure. Inside U-110's control room, Balme moved aft toward the radio and cipher room. His boots squelched, the list worsened. He pushed open the bulkhead door. Telegraphist Wild followed him in. What they saw stopped them. Documents lay stacked on the small, folding desk. Codebooks sat in racks, signal logs hung from clips, and on the desk itself, bolted down but intact, sat a machine that looked like a typewriter fitted with lamps and rotors. Wilde leaned closer. The machine was still warm. He pressed a key. A different letter illuminated on the lampboard above the keyboard. "It's peculiar, sir," Wilde said. Balme understood nothing about cryptography. He had been told, in the vaguest terms during his training, that German naval communications were enciphered and that any enemy materials related to codes were to be treated as priority intelligence. He looked at the machine, grey-painted metal, 3 rotors visible through a small window, cables running to a plug board beneath the keyboard, about the size of a portable gramophone. "Send it up," Balme ordered. "Everything in this room. Everything." On Bulldog's deck, Baker Cresswell watched the first items emerge from U-110's conning tower. Canvas bags, wooden boxes, bundles wrapped in oilcloth. Then something heavier, awkward, passed hand to hand up the ladder and onto the casing. An operator carried it across to the whaler. Baker Cresswell did not yet know what it was, but the shape, mechanical, compact, clearly important, suggested value. What had come aboard was an M3 Enigma machine, the Kriegsmarine's primary cipher device, used to encrypt every operational signal sent by German U-boats. Germany believed it unbreakable. The mathematical basis for that belief was sound. 150 quintillion possible rotor settings when plugboard configurations were included. No human could test every combination. No machine Germany knew of could solve it by brute force. But the machine alone was worthless. Without key settings, without procedures, without the daily rotor orders and plugboard configurations, the Enigma was simply a very complicated paperweight. Balme ordered the human chain to continue. Wilde re-entered the wireless office. Berridge moved forward into the captain's cabin. Tilburn searched the petty officer's quarters. The men worked in silence, passing items through narrow hatches and up vertical ladders, slick with oil and seawater. Speed governed everything. The stern continued to settle. Water crept forward along the pressure hull, visible now through the after hatchway. What came up next changed the war. Write in the comments the exact moment you believe Germany lost control of the Atlantic. I want to know when you saw it. A small booklet, red cover, titled Kurt Signal Heft, Short Signal Book. Another booklet, blue cover, Weather Reporting Codes, a larger ring-bound volume, grid reference charts for the Atlantic. A set of thin pamphlets marked with the current month. Daily key settings for the Enigma rotors, plugboard configurations, and ring positions. Recognition procedures for identifying friendly vessels, logs, charts. Anything not physically bolted to the submarine structure came up. Wilde found spare Enigma rotors in a wooden case. Berridge found the captain's operational orders. Tilburn found a locked drawer in the engineer's station and forced it, recovering technical diagrams. The mathematics of the war at sea in May 1941 were brutally simple. Britain imported 68 million tons of food, fuel, and raw materials annually. Germany's U-boat fleet, numbering approximately 120 operational boats, sank an average of 280,000 tons of Allied shipping per month during the first quarter of 1941. Replacement construction stood at 170,000 tons per month. The gap was closing, Britain was losing. The Atlantic convoy system depended on evasion, routing ships around known U-boat patrol lines, but routing depended on intelligence, and intelligence depended on reading German naval signals. Since February 1942, Bletchley Park's codebreakers had been blind. The Kriegsmarine had introduced new procedures and changed key distribution methods. Naval Enigma, the version used by U-boats, had become unreadable. Convoys sailed into U-boat wolf packs without warning, losses mounted. Britain was fighting blind. Bletchley needed three elements to break naval Enigma: captured key material to provide a starting point, predictable message formats to exploit as cribs, and a continuous supply of intercepts to detect pattern changes. U-110 provided the first element. The other two already existed in Bletchley's files, waiting. This single boarding action gave British cryptanalysts the leverage to crack the Atlantic cipher. At 11:48, Balme reported to Baker Creswell by signal lamp. U-boat towable, flooding slow, recommend salvage attempt. Baker Creswell made an immediate decision. If U-110 could be brought to Iceland, every technical system could be examined, every modification documented, every weakness catalogued. He ordered Bulldog's crew to rig towing hawsers. By 12:10, a wire was secured to U-110's bow. The corvette HMS Broadway took up escort position, course north-northwest toward Iceland, 280 miles distant. Speed 4 knots, limited by the submarine's waterlogged condition. For 6 hours the tow held. U-10 wallowed behind Bulldog, barely making steerage way, listing further to port as internal flooding spread. Then, at 18:30, Bulldog's ASDIC operator reported a possible submarine contact bearing 230 degrees, range 1,800 yards. Baker Creswell faced the calculus of command: pursue the contact and risk losing U-110, or ignore a potential threat and risk torpedo attack. He chose to investigate. Bulldog slipped the tow and increased speed. The contact faded, probably a wreck or thermal layer. When Bulldog returned at 19:05, U-110's condition had worsened. The stern was nearly submerged. Water washed over the forward casing with every wave. Balme and his boarding party were evacuated at 19:20. The tow was resecured, but it was clear the submarine could not be saved. At 11:58 on 10 May, U-110's bow lifted, the stern dropped, and the boat slid backward into the Atlantic, taking with it the physical evidence of the capture. But the intelligence was already safe aboard Bulldog, locked in the captain's cabin, wrapped in weighted bags ready to be thrown overboard if Bulldog herself faced destruction. Why had the scuttling failed? Interrogation of survivors provided fragments. The depth charge attack had damaged electrical systems throughout the boat. When U-110 surfaced, Lemp ordered scuttling charges set, but chaos ruled. Chlorine gas from cracked battery cells filled the lower compartments. Men climbed over each other to reach hatches. The boat surfaced faster than expected, stern first, disorienting everyone. Lemp gave the order to destroy materials and flood the boat, but he could not verify execution. Some men heard the order, others did not. The engineer responsible for opening the main seacocks may have been injured or simply failed to reach his station. Scuttling charges, if set, did not detonate. That single procedural collapse handed Britain the key to Germany's naval communications. Lemp realized his error. After abandoning ship, he saw the boat still floating. He saw British sailors boarding. He He struck out toward U-110, attempting to swim back, to finish the scuttling himself or die trying. He drowned 20 meters from the submarine. His body was not recovered. If you understand what quiet bravery means when men face impossible odds, share this with someone who needs to hear it. The captured materials reached Bletchley Park on 13th of May, 1941. Cryptanalysts in Hut 8, led by Alan Turing and Hugh Alexander, began exploitation immediately. The short signal book provided cribs, predictable phrases and formats. The key tables gave starting positions for May and June. The Enigma machine itself revealed minor wiring changes introduced since earlier models were captured from surface vessels. By 19th of May, Bletchley broke its first U-boat signal using U-110 material. By June, naval Enigma was readable again, not in real time, but with delays short enough to allow convoy rerouting. The impact was measurable. In the 3 months before U-110's capture, U-boats sank 142 Allied merchant ships, totaling 818,000 tons. In the 3 months after, sinkings dropped to 94 ships, totaling 432,000 tons. The decline was not steady. German tactics evolved, new U-boats entered service, Wolfpack coordination improved, but the British advantage held. Convoy routing became effective again. U-boat patrol lines were identified and avoided. Wolfpack assembly points were detected. The cumulative effect was a slowing of the Atlantic strangulation. Germany never knew. Security around the capture was absolute. U-110 survivors were separated, interrogated individually, and held in Canadian camps far from other prisoners. British censors suppressed all mention. Bulldog's crew were briefed. Say nothing, write nothing, discuss nothing. The secret held for 30 years. In Germany, U-110 was listed as lost with all hands, cause unknown, presumed depth charged. The boarding party received no immediate recognition. Balme was mentioned in dispatches, a standard, unremarkable notation. The others returned to regular duties. Wilde served aboard Bulldog until 1943, then transferred to a destroyer. Tilburn survived the war. Berridge did not. He was killed in 1942 when his next ship took a torpedo. None of them knew at the time what they had accomplished. They had been ordered to recover materials, and they had done so. The significance was kept from them. David Balme, interviewed in 1998, remembered the moment he dropped through U-110's hatch. "I expected Germans with machine guns. I found lights on and nobody home. It was eerie. The boat creaked. You didn't know if she'd roll over or blow up, but everything was there, just sitting, so we took it." He was asked if he understood the importance at the time. "No, we were told it mattered, but not how much. I didn't find out what we'd actually done until the 1970s when the story came out. By then, it seemed like ancient history. But I suppose it mattered. It mattered. U-110 was not the only Enigma capture, but it was the most complete and the most timely. It broke the blackout on U-boat communications at the moment Britain could least afford continued blindness. Other captures followed: weather ships, surface raiders, damaged submarines. But U-110 provided the foundation. The procedures recovered from Balme's boarding laid the groundwork for sustained decryption through 1941 and into 1942, when further captures and cryptanalytic breakthroughs extended coverage. The lesson is not about technology. Enigma machines were captured before and after U-110. The lesson is about young men boarding a sinking enemy submarine, climbing down into darkness, and methodically stripping it of everything portable in the 12 minutes before it became a tomb. The lesson is that wars are not won by brilliance alone, but by ordinary men performing dangerous tasks with competence and nerve. Balme was 20, Wilder was 21, Tilburn was 19. They had no special training. They simply did the job in front of them, knowing the boat could sink or explode, knowing they might not climb out, and doing it anyway. This was not heroism in the cinematic sense. No speeches were made, no flags were waved. The men climbed back into the whaler, soaked and shaking, and returned to bulldog in silence. What they brought with them changed the mathematics of the Battle of the Atlantic. The numbers shifted, the balance tipped, not decisively, not immediately, but enough. Press the like button if this history moved you. Leave one word in the comments. What would you have done in Balme's position? And subscribe, because when we stop telling these stories, the men who lived them die twice. Thank you for watching Britain in Battle.